Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is George Howson, and today we're here to preview the 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Today we have Grid Talk's Wayne Medford.
Hello.
Our man in Japan, Louis Edwards.
Hello.
And sports journalist Dev Tiagi.
Hi guys, good to be back here.
Good to have you back on, Dev. And before we get into this episode, we must first thank our sponsor, Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the game. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance to win weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino and get in on a card game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with over the 150 slot games on there. Head over to the website today and get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. And of course, if you want to support Grid Talk some more as well, you can head over to our social medias at Grid Talk UK on all the social medias that have an @ symbol. And if you're feeling extra generous as well, you can consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind the scenes content. More on that later. But first, let's start with the actual race that we're previewing here, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. So I'll start with you first, Louis. For me, Baku is a bit of a Marmite circuit. It's either you love it or you hate it. It seems to produce a lot of great races, but then some very dull ones as well. But where do you sit on the Baku Street circuit in Formula One?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with the Marmite analogy. It really does throw up some great races. There's definitely some iconic moments that have happened at Baku over the years. But let's face it, the last few years have been less than memorable. When I think about Baku and I think about moments, usually most of them are like 2018 and before. I'll be completely honest. My recollection of recent moments is a little bit more foggy. So I mean, I'm fine with Baku being on the track. It's a very unique circuit in terms of the street circuits that we do have. For one, there is actually opportunity for overtaking, plentiful opportunity for overtaking at Baku, which does make a change for some of the newer street circuits that we go to. And it does, it's definitely an unpredictable race. Something can go wrong at any time. We've seen that time and time again. The odd red flag, safety car can really throw the result of a race. And yeah, I'm more than happy for Baku to still be on the calendar. And, as we keep going on into the future, I have no reason why I would want it to go. It's still a unique challenge, and I think it's still a good spectacle to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely somewhere that's produced some surprise results, to say the least. Some people might criticise the racing there over the years, but Dev, you did an article earlier today for the F1 Chronicle really going over how unusual this track is. I mean, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have only won one race each year, and the most successful driver overall is Sergio Perez with 2 wins in the last 3 years. It's a track that, for better or worse, it definitely produces some surprises.
Right, Joe, thanks for bringing that up. Actually, if you were to think about it, the most successful driver at this testing track is the one who's going through perhaps the test of his life, Sergio Perez, Checo Perez. He's won here twice, and that too hasn't actually been a consecutive victory. So 2021 and 2023. And, somewhere in the middle, Red Bulls were trying to pick up the pace here on the circuit, but I won't say that they really have it sorted out as yet when it comes to the 50-lap contest. But I think what we can expect, the next weekend is perhaps a close fight between Red Bull and McLaren, which would actually raise the expectations and perhaps give this interesting contest more viewership than it has got so far. But it's Formula One. We don't know what's going to happen. But can Red Bull pick up a win, which for their driver title hopes as well as the constructor battle will be fantastic. Something which Lando and Oscar would completely dread.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a racetrack that can really throw the form book out of the window. And right now, a Red Bull win would definitely be throwing the form book out of the window, something that we never, ever thought we'd be saying earlier on in this season. But yeah, I mean, we normally touch on kind of the memories of circuits before we preview them, Wayne. I mean, this is a track that doesn't have too much history, but in its short time on the calendar, it's produced some very landmark moments and some incredible races. 2017 was unbelievable. 2021 was absolutely crazy. And I think 2018 as well, off the top of my head, was a very frantic finish there with the 2 Mercedes. But what are your main memories of the Baku circuit in Formula One?
I mean, I think I think just, I mean, as you say, like just the shorter time it's been on the calendar, it's produced, things that stick in my mind and will stick in my mind, for a very, very long time. We've got, just going back sort of from most recent to least recent, we've got, Max Verstappen and Lance Stroll having those big blowouts down the straight, and then obviously the red flag that caused, and Lewis Hamilton going straight at that first corner, and obviously gifting Sergio Perez that win. And then you've got the prior to that, with we obviously didn't get the 2020 race, but then you go back to 2018, obviously, and as you say, we've got the Red Bulls running into each other. Daniel Ricciardo rear-ending Max Verstappen in a move that was maybe a little bit ill-advised, and then obviously, I mean, who can forget the inaugural? Well, no, sorry, it wasn't the inaugural race; it was the 2017.
It was the European Grand Prix 2016.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of the wrong one. I was thinking 2017, where Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton clearly in a title fight. What obviously Sebastian Vettel ran into Lewis Hamilton twice, and I think that the sort of characteristic for me of Baku is, if it's not a boring race, it's usually so interesting or so sort of chaotic that I think everyone, if you've got any sort of I guess doubt in your mind or anything like that, it just allows people, it just sort of predisposes even the top drivers to making mistakes, and I think that's what makes it interesting. That's my abiding memory of Baku, is the fact that anyone can make a mistake, and they usually do.
Yeah, it's a very stressful track. It's a track as well. We can see some incredible temperatures, and like you said as well, the battle between Seb Vettel and Lewis Hamilton in 2017. I'll never forget the radio from Vettel. When did I do dangerous driving? Just like, hey, when you rammed into the side of him, mate. But we do have a title battle though, Louis. And like I said earlier on, this is something that I never saw coming earlier this season. I was very downtrodden when it came to Formula One, when it came to the battles. But we very much have a battle, particularly in the Constructors' Championship. Just 8 points between McLaren and Red Bull going into this one. There's a real chance with the form of both of these teams at the moment that we could have McLaren leading the Constructors' Championship by, just off the top of my head, for the first time probably since 2012, if not before. And the first time that anybody not called Red Bull has done it since the start of, 2022, when Ferrari were there. So what I'm coming to a McLaren fan on this one. What do we think? Is McLaren going to come out of this one in the top of the Constructors' Championship now?
I mean, we've been this a lot over the recent races. This as this Constructors' Championship gap has been slowly but steadily coming down over the last kind of like races, where we've seen McLaren really pick up the pace, and Red Bull obviously being nowhere near as dominant as they were in the few races of this. But if Monza's to anything to go by, if anything like that happens again, then obviously, but we know that Red Bull, and especially Verstappen, has a knack for fighting back. He's not it's not often that we see Max Verstappen have two completely disastrous weekends in a row. Even if he doesn't maybe win the race, he tends to be on the when things have not gone his way. I think the big question will be what will happen with the McLarens. I think we need to kind of accept now that Red Bull aren't particularly quick. They're not the fastest team on the grid, and it's all shifted into McLaren's hands. Can they keep their from fighting each other and potentially costing each other points like we saw him? Are we going to see good strategy from McLaren, which we certainly have seen throughout the season? And we've yet to really, I don't want to hit a curse or anything, but we haven't really seen McLaren have any sort of mechanical issues too much this season. Their car has been fairly steady, pretty reliable. We're going to obviously I obviously want to continue. There are so many unknowns, and that's why I say it's all very much in McLaren's hands. It's, can they keep doing those three things? Can they, get to the front, stay to the front? Talking about Lando, really, after a Saturday, can he actually keep it in the front of the car? Well, front of the pack. Can McLaren's strategy actually work off and allow McLaren to actually dominate, rather than having to worry about another chasing car, and then finally will the car stay reliable? But I would personally expect that Red Bull will be second in the Constructors' Championship after this weekend.
I think with the form of the two teams right now, it's definitely likely it's not that big of a swing. Even if Red Bull get a better result, get Max Verstappen on the podium, for example, the McLarens are more than likely going to be up there too. But also up there potentially as well, Dev, are Ferrari. I mean, they've kind of ghosted back into contention in the Constructors' Championship. Just 39 points between them in third and Red Bull at the top. I mean, by no means are they an immediate striking distance like McLaren are, but if they continue to get some good points, get the odd win like Charles Leclerc magnificently did at Monza last week, we could see Ferrari mixing it up there. So how do you see Ferrari getting on this weekend? Because Leclerc has never won around here, but he has had a lot of good pace, getting pole a couple of times, I believe, off the top of my head. So how do you see Carlos and Charles getting on at Baku this weekend?
So I think it's very interesting to reflect on the kind of performances that Charles and Carlos have had at this particularly intriguing venue, if I might add. So, Carlos Sainz's first visit at the venue was actually with Toro Rosso. He started his Baku career, for the lack of a better word, with the DNF, and then it was followed by a P8. And as the years rolled by, he got a P5 with Renault, which actually happens to be his best ever result at the track. Something which was mirrored by his performance with Ferrari last year, P5, but he hasn't really done beyond that. So Carlos particularly would want to at least break into the top three, but can that happen? I don't think he has the kind of pace, that also where his recent form suggests he doesn't seem to have the kind of pace to blast his way, a top three. But then this is again F1. You don't know what's going to happen. This being a very surprising track. Charles, on the other hand, I would say has an envy-inspiring record here, which means that he's the only driver at this venue to have got three consecutive pole positions: 2021, 2022, 2023. But then he's just been at best he's been able to bisect the Red Bulls, and he would remember his effort here last year, because he was able to get a fighting third, but then it wasn't really as close on race day. His pace, I mean, in comparison to the two what one saw a day earlier during qualifying. Of course, I remember he was passed first the two Red Bull cars, and I think later the Mercedes of Hamilton at breakneck. So that's something that's going to be playing on the mind of Monegasque. But again, he would be pumped up, and why not? He's just won a brilliant Grand Prix at Monza. So he would want to fancy his chances. But at the end of the day, even if it comes down to qualifying, Lando and Oscar are not going to be easy to beat. And it's actually amazing for the sport that red and orange are fighting after such a long time. But then guess what? Red Bull are still in the picture, and very much so. So Ferrari, who haven't really won a solitary Grand Prix here, would want to feel that they can perhaps pull up a surprise, but you just don't know, because Lando and Oscar are really going for it, and I'm so happy to see McLaren. It's kind of a resurgence for the sport in itself, a badly needed one.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a big surprise to see McLaren like they are. I mean, I'm still having to pinch myself because I'm dreaming it. I never ever saw this coming at all. But Ferrari never winning round here. 3 consecutive pole positions for Charles Leclerc, though, just kind of emphasising how good he's in qualifying, or how good his car is in qualifying compared to.
In fact, so sorry to interject, but the best performance that Ferrari have backed so far is a P2. And that happened in 2018 first, when Kimi Raikkonen was able to get a P2. And I think it's the same year where Hamilton not only won the race at Baku, but of course he won a fantastic title fight. And that's that. Ferrari have been at best P2 at Baku. So I think something to prove there for the Tifosi and for the rest of their supporters.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point you make. And the thing is as well with Ferrari, with their pace, they were effectively flipped around for what they normally are. They're normally really good in qualifying, and in the race it all falls apart. But it was the other way around at Monza. McLaren had a front row lockout, and Charles Leclerc still managed to win. So anything can happen, and absolutely anything can happen in Formula One, including Owain, Adrian Newey signing for Aston Martin as their chief designer. Now, we've talked about this a lot. We've already brought you the news that he's going to leave Red Bull a long time ago. We've hypothesized about where he might go. Mercedes being rumored, Ferrari being rumored, McLaren even being rumored at times. But BBC are reporting, and I remember it being a similar announcement Sir Lewis signed for, reporting that Newey's going to sign as Aston Martin for at least a 3-year deal, £30 million per year. Is this? I mean, kind of give your opinion on it. Really, I mean, it's a very interesting move because right now you look at Aston Martin and they're not really pulling up any trees at all. They're the fifth fastest team on the grid at best at most races, and they've not really made much progress in the last couple of years. But it is a team that has a lot of potential. They've got that new factory. They've got an ambitious owner, a questionable owner at times for sure, but an ambitious owner, no doubt. So, do you think this rumor is true, and do you think it's the right move, really?
Well, as far as I was concerned, it was basically confirmed. Right, let's work on the assumption that it is. For me, I think it's obviously we've had sort of rumors out with Ferrari that they didn't pursue further for the issues of a bidding war. But I think the rumors are that Adrian Newey is going to get a lot more control over things at Aston Martin than he did at Red Bull. Obviously, the rumored pay packet, absolutely. And I think the other thing is that he's going to walk into a team that has been building to be sort of ready to go, ready to challenge in terms of facilities. It just needs maybe that bit of focus and that that extra little bit of X factor that it doesn't necessarily have. Obviously, we all know that Adrian Newey was there for a long time at Red Bull. Managing to turn in a car that compete for the championship, and I think it obviously makes a lot of sense for him to go to a place where he can. Clearly, he's got other interests, and he can sort of satisfy those while also doing the Formula One project. And I think maybe he's walking into a team that he's been promised. If he goes to Aston Martin, he's been promised an aero team who will sort of do what he wishes, which is apparently not the case at Red Bull with how the rest of the aero department was to go. Obviously he's more of the ideas man, and the specifics get left up to the individual aero designers. That's fairly well documented. But if he can walk into a team and be given exactly what he needs to thrive, and they're willing to listen, I can't see this going badly for him. And obviously it's going to come with a massive payday, which who doesn't want that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the money's definitely part of it. I mean, he got offered a very similar deal to go to Alpine as well. Apparently, Flavio Briatore just basically promised in the world. But yeah, the world is not enough, I suppose, to quote a James Bond film title. But yeah, it's an incredible move. I think, just speaking as a bit of a neutral, I suppose it's a move. It's just trying to change up the order. I mean, we've seen Red Bull struggle recently. I know Newey is not the only reason for that with his leaving, but it's got to be part of it. It has to be part of it. It's more than a coincidence, if not. But yeah, an incredible move for Formula One if it's confirmed, if it happens. There is cause for optimism, Louis, at the end of the day. I mean, you've got Newey coming in with that deal. You've also got Honda engines coming in for 2026, effectively Aston Martin becoming the works team with that. They've brought in some big people from Red Bull. And of course, they will have the incredible talent of Fernando Alonso in one of the cars. Lance Stroll's going to be the other, by all accounts, from what we've heard, which isn't the best. But, Alonso's still, for me, showing some good performances. So a similar question really to you is what I asked Wayne. What's your reaction and thoughts to it? Is this the final piece in the puzzle that will the Silverstone outfit? Because they've never done it before. They were Jordan, they've been Spiker, they've been Racing Point and Force India. They've never won a title before in Formula One. Is this the final piece in the...
Well, as they say, my dad buys me socks. Well, Lawrence Stroll buys Lance Stroll, Adrian Newey. It's the way Formula One works sometimes. It's, it's going to be going to the highest bidder, and Lawrence Stroll is a man with a lot to bid. It's just the way this sport. I mean, I'm not sure how his works into the whole budget cap, but it's quite a sizable chunk But I think it makes logical sense for Newey, at least. He's going into a team that are hungry, they're well supported. It's a lot of new facilities. There's such a huge foundation for him to work on. If you go to Alpine is an absolute mess. We look at the way that Alpine have operated over the last few years. They are a complete and utter mess. So definitely not a good idea to go there. We've got Aston Martin, who, as you said, they brought in people. This is not only Adrian Newey. They brought in other people from Red Bull, other people from Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes. They are just slowly, bit by bit, building this team to be championship worthy. And now we've got the cherry on top, which is Adrian Newey. And I think for any senior person in an F1 team, Aston Martin as a project looks very, and I think has the ramifications for F1. It's going to be a case of we need to start looking at this Aston Martin. It will maybe not next year, maybe not the year after that. As Owain said, it's taken years for the projects like this to get, but 2028, 2027, 2028, are we going to see Aston Martin in the front? I bet your bottom dollar that they will. And Lance Stroll, F1 World Championship runner-up to Fernando Alonso, because Stroll is terrible and he won't win a World Championship. You could give him the world and he would still somehow drop it and ruin it. Fernando Alonso is going to 22 years after his initial championship win, he's going to come back and he's going to do it. He's going to do it. 8-time world champion Fernando Alonso. You want my words?
Oh, don't worry, I will. Yeah, I mean the irony of Alonso potentially one day winning a championship with the company he once described as their engines being of GP2 quality, Formula 2 nowadays, of course. The irony of that would be absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, it is the cherry on top of the cake. It is a part of an incredible long-term project that Aston Martin have. That is their vision. Whether that vision is realised or not, don't know. You can't really do better than hiring. I mean, on the budget cap, I believe, and someone might well correct me on this, but I believe the rule is that your top 3 earning employees, whether they're drivers, team personnel, whatever, whoever the top 3 earners on the payroll, I don't think they count towards the budget cap. Hence why the likes of Sir Lewis Hamilton's on like $50 million or pounds a year or whatever, because he doesn't count towards the budget cap. So at 30 million a year, I'd wager that Newey's probably going to be on more than Lance Stroll. And even if he's not, which he will be, he's still going to be in the top 3 paid. So,
I mean, does Lance Stroll even have to be paid? Does Lance Stroll genuinely just race for free? His dad will just like support him in his life,
just on minimum wage, just on a Tesco or Co-op store assistant wage, technically for tax reasons or whatever. Anyway, we're really digressing with that. So yeah, Newey looks like it's pretty much confirmed to go to Aston Martin, as being reported by some pretty big outlets, like I said. But it's not confirmed. But what is confirmed, though, for this weekend, though, Dave, is that Ollie Bearman is going to make his second start in Formula One, making his Haas debut. He is already confirmed to be driving for Haas as a full-time driver. Next season, this is going to give us an idea of what we can potentially expect. But like we spoke about in this show, it's not an easy track for him to make his Haas racing debut in. Then again, he made his F1 racing debut around Saudi Arabia, which I can confirm from the Formula One game is pretty hard to drive around. It's not the easiest one. So what can we expect from Bearman this weekend? Because he obviously got points on debut, but that was in a Ferrari. Now he's going to be in a Haas. Is a top 10 realistic for him around a difficult track like Azerbaijan?
So interestingly, last year in 2023, he took pole position here at Baku in Formula 2 for, the feature race. And I think that's no mean feat. And, as you were rightly pointing out, in his maiden drive ever in a Formula 1 car earlier this year at Jeddah, which is no easy track to navigate your way, he ended up scoring a 7th, and he actually, in the process of which he finished ahead of Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. So that's no small feat either. So by those racing credentials, Bearman is an amazing driver, I would say. He's so the young powerhouse of talent from Essex, I think his best days are ahead of him. And I think it is with this unbridled hope and optimism that he will sit in that Haas car in the next few days with an aim to at least bag a solitary point and to further add on to his confidence of having begun so brilliantly, because, he was filling in for Carlos Sainz. He was a massively talented driver, and, the only man last year who stopped Verstappen getting victory at Singapore. So Bearman's talent speaks for himself. His records do as well. And as a matter of fact, he would also remember that, last year he had a fantastic F2, rather a very respectable finish in the F2 championship, with the likes of which, so there were so many tremendously talented drivers competing for top honors. So Theo Porcher took it in the end. There was the likes of Doohan, Ivasa, Martins, Fittipaldi, and 2 Indian drivers there as well. And Ollie Bearman got a P6, which is not a terrible result. And he's just 19. And Formula One has backed him. He's got his future secured. Haas is not a terrible, terrible team to be, competing for. And he'll also want to prove something to Esteban Ocon, who's also a very, very capable driver. So I think it's interesting times for Ollie. But let's see what Baku brings. Not an easy track. Anything can happen. And it's Formula One at the end of the young kid, getting his second ever Formula One drive. But let's see what happens.
Yeah, we've got some incredible rookies coming in for 25. I mean, Bearman, Antonelli, doing some real 5-star potential drivers, I would say, in the field coming in 2025. But if you're enjoying this podcast, we'd love it if you could leave a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you're one of the 72% of people who aren't yet subscribed to the channel, please help us out with a like and a subscribe over on YouTube. Ring the bell as well to see when we go live. Obviously, we'll be going out live shortly after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix concludes on Sunday. So back onto the topics. So yeah, I just want to touch on Red Bull and Mercedes next, though. We spoke about them a bit. I mean, obviously Red Bull's pace has dropped off. Mercedes really surprised me in a bad way around Italy. I mean, I genuinely thought they'd have the fastest car, honestly. I mean, McLaren, I think, overall have the fastest car in Formula One, but I thought around a high-speed track, the highest of high-speed tracks on the calendar at Monza, they would look very good. But as it was, they wasn't really that much faster than the Red Bull. We've had a couple of weeks off now. The teams are always developing the cars as always. Red Bull say they found the issue with their car now. They claim they found it, although they haven't solved it yet. So what can we expect from them this weekend? Because again, if it's similar to what we saw in Italy, Ferrari and McLaren looked the clear class of the field.
Yeah, personally, I'm actually more I'm more confident in Mercedes performing relatively well around Baku than I am actually in Red. Finding an issue is relatively easy. Fixing it is maybe a different matter altogether. They may have to walk back and lose performance. Obviously, I assume they're very intelligent. I know that they know what they're doing. So, or at least they should do. But there's doubt from other teams just about how good the tools that Red Bull have available are. How well they're correlating with on-track performance. And one thing that we do know about that Red Bull, regardless, we saw this in Singapore last year, and we've seen it at times here. You look at Red Bull's worst performances, and they have come on street circuits. And I think part of the reason that has sort of been theorized by many people smarter than me with better understandings of vehicle dynamics and things like that is how bumpy they are. This Red Bull, is very good in a certain window, and when you start to back off how stiff the car is, they lose the aerodynamic performance, and that's very, very important around Baku. It's not the most bumpy track in the world, but it's not exactly a billiard. And it's one of those things where I think that may just lose them the edge over the McLaren and definitely the Ferrari, which seem to be much, much more performant when you take the car slightly outside of its ideal operating window. I don't think we're going to see a massive uptick in form, at least in the next two Grand Prix from Red Bull, but certainly Azerbaijan. When it comes to Mercedes, I think they definitely had. We saw the team, Lewis Hamilton saying that he could have done better in qualifying. Obviously, not so good in the race. I think that was mostly strategy from in Italy. And by comparison, I think if they, knowing that, they might be able to get the balance a little bit further on. And there's sort. Monza is almost all straights and slow corners. This is now straights and slow corners, but there's medium speed corners in there. And I think maybe Mercedes might have a chance of. I think they could be the second quickest if they're very lucky, and they get things absolutely right. But I don't see them being sort of the fourth fastest car, which is what we've seen over the last couple of races, particularly in Monza. I think there's enough confidence in the team there, and I think they can do it.
Yeah, we'll have to see what it brings. It's a good point you make with the bumpiness of the track. I mean, weather-wise, it's meant to be calm but hot, and we've seen that some teams have really struggled in hot weather. I mean, it's meant to be high 20s around Baku, so you can expect the track temperatures to be touching 40 degrees Celsius. So it's going to be roasting for sure. So we'll have to see how those teams get on with that. But yeah, let's look at some predictions. So we've talked about how we think all these teams are going to do, their potential with that. But now it's time to put our money where our mouth is. So, Louis, time for pole position, podium predictions, and of course the bold prediction.
I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. It's a weirdly safe bet to go with. Is I still would say the best one lap pace driver on the entirety of the grid. He is rapid. So with how good Ferrari is going to has been, I would Charles Leclerc. And then for my podium, my top three would be: third place would be Piastri, second place would Leclerc, and then winner would be Lando Norris. Bold prediction is that I'm going to go with Bearman into Q3 and will score points.
I'm liking that. Good result for McLaren, a good result for Bearman on his Haas debut. You'd love to see it. Dev, what are you thinking for this weekend? Podium prediction, pole position, and a bold prediction as well, please.
Bold prediction is that Daniel Ricciardo will score a point somehow. He'll manage again. I'd be very happy for him. He suffered a lot. I don't know what the future holds for him, but I think the person who's going to take pole position is definitely be somebody from McLaren. But I would say podium finish for George Russell. George Russell outscoring Lewis Hamilton, and because I think we've hardly spoken about Russell in this episode. He's been very quick in qualifying, and he generally has been having not such a bad year. But I think the race win would go to Max.
Doesn't that say so much about Formula One, this current run, that a guy that crossed the line first in Belgium 2 races ago, now him picking up a podium as a bold prediction. But I agree with you of how far Mercedes were off the pace. Them going for a podium for him, it is a bit of a bold prediction in it. Owain, same to you. Podium, pole position, bold prediction, please.
So I think pole position, I'm going to go with Piastri. Of all the drivers, I think the McLaren is the fastest car, and I think Piastri's maybe got slightly better 1 lap pace than Lando Norris, or at least maybe a better mindset. It might be that. When it comes to the, I foresee. You know what? I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton second, and then I'm going to go with Piastri first. I think that's a lights to flag win, and then Lando Norris. And then my bold prediction, I'm going to go with both Williams inside the points.
Oh, you kind of took mine there. I will just get on to what mine is, but yeah, for me, I'm going to agree with Louis. I'm going to go for a relatively safe bet of Charles Leclerc on pole for the podium. And this is so difficult to predict, but just to go for something different, I think Piastri is a likely winner, to be honest. But just for something different, I'll go with Lando for the win. Second place, let's go Leclerc. I think he'll still be up there. He's very good around here. Still not getting a win, though, around Baku, despite how good he's been over the years, despite all pole positions it'd be in a row, if that does come true. The third place, I'll chuck Lewis Hamilton on the podium. He'll find a way. I'll just go with that. And my bold prediction now, people who've been watching this show and listened to this show for a long time will know that traditionally I've gone for a Williams driver to get into the points. It was George Russell back in the day. Then I think Logan Sargent got it with Phil, and I'm bringing it back alive. Franco Colapinto, top 10, getting a point at least. That's my bold prediction for this weekend. So there we go. So yeah, Owain, just to bring it on to some shout outs. Grid Talk, of course, is our main show, but on the side we also have something covering the Junior Series, and of course Formula 2 is back in Baku. That's going to be eventful. But just give a little plug to Formula Talk.
Yeah, so if you'd like to see what will almost certainly be just complete carnage, if you'd like to hear the Grid Talk take on it, hosted by Sophia Richmond, we have Formula Talk. That's available everywhere that you get Grid Talk, the Grid Talk podcast. And I'm sure it's going to be. I'm sure that's going to be a brilliant. So make sure you tune in for that. Well, like I say, available everywhere where you get talk.
Yeah, definitely going to look forward to that and look forward to the events on track, and also as Sophia trying to summarise his pitch. Dev, I mentioned in the intro to the show that you're a sports journalist. Where can we find you?
You can find my work on Chronicle. I write some features and news there, which I really love, and that's all thanks to Jared Patridge for believing in me. I thank him. He has my always. And you can also find some of my features on Formula One on kairosports.com. I also write a bit of cricket content for. Of course, then I have my own publication called caughtatpoint.com, but that's purely cricket, not a sport Lando, Oscar, or Ricardo would be interested in, despite two of those three being.
Thanks, Dev. Yeah, definitely check out Dev's writing. It's always makes for an interesting read. If you want to see some more stuff from me, you can head over to the F1 Chronicle as well, but more for the video sites. Also cover things such as football, IndyCar, and now gaming. We've just started a new gaming chronicle as well. So yeah, go check out our videos on the usual social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, probably forgetting a few as well, Substack as well, and the audio platforms and Apple Music, as well as, of course, Microsoft. So a lot of people like to watch our content when they should be working, but that is absolutely fine by us. Not a problem there at all. So, and if you want to see some more from Grid Talk, we're available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for Grid Talk on all of those to find our big back catalogue of shows. We just passed 400 episodes recently as well. Just shows how long we've been going. We're going for 5 years now, which I never ever envisaged when I first did the show all those years ago. And thank you as well to Jared Bradley for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support the show further, sign up for some exclusive content and a shout out at the end of the show if you go for that tier. We've got some new tiers on there, so do check it out if you want to go and support us. That's the best way to go and do it. And yeah, big thank you to my panelists for joining me as always.
No worries.
No problem.
And as well, thank you very much to listening to the Grid Talk podcast. We'll be back on Sunday, 3 p.m. UK time. That is 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time over in the United States to review the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Thanks very much for listening and watching the Grid Talk podcast presented by Bet Online, and goodbye.